Hello everyone and welcome to today's video, which is where we're going to be looking at selling a HMO, which is a house of multiple occupation. Now, when it comes to selling a HMO, there's some quite specific things that are worth considering because it's unlike selling any ordinary vacant property, and it's certainly unlike selling actually any ordinary buy-to-let property because there are certain buyers that are going to be looking for HMOs over maybe, let's say, a buy-to-let or even a development property, but they also look for certain things. So we'll try and touch on in today's video the who and the how, so kind of what type of buyer would you sell it to, but also what those buyers are going to be looking for so that you can really optimize your existing property, your existing HMO in preparation and ready for a sale. So first of all, it's worth just kind of narrowing into the who. What type of buyer would buy a HMO? And when we're looking at kind of HMOs and houses of multiple occupation, in this particular video, we're going to be focusing in on what we'd class as kind of a ready to go property. So a HMO that's already up and running, fully tenanted, fully managed, has some income history alongside it, rather than maybe a development property or a property that could be converted at some point in time to a house of multiple occupation. So if we're focusing on already rented properties, then the obvious solution as a buyer would be selling to an investor, because you're not going to be selling to a homeowner. They're not going to be looking at HMOs or rented properties. And you're unlikely to sell to very often developers, because developers wouldn't be looking at ready to go properties. They're looking at ways that they can add some value. And that's not a bad thing. Looking for investors that are focused in on pre-existing HMOs, already up and running, fully managed, as we said, fully tenanted, and they can really be appealing assets to investors for a whole host of reasons. The same as if you were maybe selling kind of a business to an investor or to a business buyer. You want to be focusing on businesses that are already income generating. And as a buyer, that gives them a lot of confidence. It gives them a lot of confidence that the management structure is set up correctly, that the income is consistent, there's some historic history there in terms of the demand from tenants, and they've got some real understanding of what that property is likely to perform like. Unlike going headfirst maybe into a development for an investor, where there's lots of uncertainties, they could spend a long period of time and a lot of management in trying to get a property up and running and still have no idea how it's going to actively perform on the open market. So selling an up and running existing HMO to investors can be a very appealing prospect, but they will be your core buyers, investors that are looking specifically at that market. Then it's worth considering kind of how would you go about kind of selling a HMO? Now, this is something we can absolutely assist with, and I'll touch on at the end of the video a service that we can provide to help you sell those HMOs. But I'll also give you an overview now of the different options that you might have that are well worth considering. So the first option, which is the typical kind of standard route for selling any property, would be your local high street estate agency. Now, the downsides for that is very often, although they can market it the same as they can do any property in their local area, and they'll have some very good and specific local expertise, they are unlikely to have a large database of investors. And certainly within that pool of investors, a database of investors looking specifically at HMOs. And this is a very kind of narrow focused marketplace. There's lots of value add that can be had on all parties and all sides, but it is a very specific core buyer pool that you're looking to target. And when you focus in on using local high street estate agents, although they can put it on the portals, although they can try and do the same marketing campaigns they would do for a home in a property, they do have some limitations with the existing buyer pool that they'll have specifically as investors. The second option could be selling via an auction, which is again a typical route that many people look at for selling properties. The downside here with auctions is that very often the buyers at auctions are looking for a kind of a deal. Effectively, they're looking for properties they can maybe buy at a discount, properties they can add some value with. They may consider, and they do buy, properties that are fully rented at auction, but they're unlikely to pay kind of full market value, and they're unlikely to kind of really stretch to try and find lots of kind of HMOs within an auction environment, because it's not a typical process for HMOs. It's a typical process for developments, typical process for some buy-to-lets and some vacant properties, but HMOs very often are sold in a slightly different manner. And that's really where the third option comes in, which is selling via an investment-focused agent. Now, you may not have come across those before, but there are a few that exist across the country. Some focus in on property types, so they might sell maybe new build or off-plan. Some focus in on locations, so they might focus maybe in Birmingham or Manchester or London. Some even focus in on price ranges, so they maybe focus on very high affluent type of locations and property types. and others might focus on the kind of slightly lower value marketplace. So it's about trying to find that balance, which investment company is going to be the right fit for you when you're selling a HMO. But there are out there, and it's worth speaking to a range of them to get comfortable with which ones are going to provide you the right service. But the benefits of selling via an investment agent is very often that they will have a pool of ready to go existing buyers, properties that they've bought before with that agent. That buyer trusts the agent to introduce them to the right deals, and therefore it's a much smoother process if you're selling a HMO with an investment company and they have existing buyers for that whole transaction to take place, because you're not having to wait for many months for a marketing period to go through and to try and find kind of new buyers. Because they have that existing trust and relationship with their existing buyers, it's very often a quicker process. Those buyers are more attuned to focusing in on investment properties. So they are more focused on, let's say, key aspects like rental yields, rental amounts, what sort of income does that property generate, tenant types they might be more aware of. They're also looking for properties, as we said before, that are managed, fully managed, tenanted already, have existing history, and that's a perfect fit for them. So rather than trying to find kind of round pegs, square holes and force the sale through maybe a traditional method, by focusing on an investment company, that usually gives you access to the right buyers straight away, which improves the whole process for everybody. And that's where we can assist. So as I mentioned earlier, there are a service that we provide which helps investors when they're selling properties, whether that's an individual buy-to-let, portfolio properties, or what we're talking about here, specifically a HMO, which is quite a specific property type, then absolutely we can assist. And there's different ways that we can kind of do that. We have different partnerships, different companies that we work with, different investors that we work with, but ultimately it achieves a quicker sale for you. So you don't have to worry about maybe giving notice to tenants, you don't have to worry about void periods, you don't have to worry about this specific kind of niche of how do you sell what is quite a specific type of property. We have a solution there for you and be happy to help and chat. So if there's any questions at all, please feel free to reach out, and look forward to catching up with you on the next video. All the best.